My family sabotaged my future. Now they already regretted. For 18 years, I believed I was never good enough, rejected by every college, kicked out by my dad, and left to rebuild my life from nothing. But when my mother recently asked to meet, she handed me a stack of dusty envelopes that shattered everything I thought I knew. Turns out I wasn't rejected. I was sabotaged. And now they want to start over, like none of it ever happened. But before I can even think about forgiveness, I can't ignore the truth of how it all began, how I was treated like a second-class member of my own family. Growing up, it was clear that I wasn't the favorite. My parents, especially my mom, were always obsessed with my older brother. He could do no wrong in their eyes. They pinned all their hopes and dreams on him becoming a doctor, like that title alone would validate the entire family. He strutted around with this false confidence, like the world already owed him something. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one in the background, the kid who stayed up writing stories, drawing storyboards, watching old movies, and dreaming of making films one day. That dream, to them, was a joke, something immature, something to grow out of. I still remember family dinners where they'd gush about my brother's future in medicine, even though he had a 2.1 GPA and couldn't sit through a full class without picking a fight with the teacher. Every time he yelled, pouted, or threw a tantrum because he didn't get his way, my mom would just sigh and pat his back like he was 5 years old. If I ever spoke up or showed any emotion, I was being difficult or disrespectful. There was no space for me to be anything except obedient and invisible. I didn't hate my brother at the time. Not really. I just felt confused, hurt. I thought maybe if I work harder, they'll see me. Maybe if I get into a good college, they'll finally be proud of me for once. So in my senior year, I applied to every college I could. I stayed up late writing essays, filling out forms, and dreaming about what it would be like to finally get out, to finally start building my own future on my own terms. I checked the mailbox every day, waiting for a letter. Any letter. But none came. Not one. At first, I told myself it was just bad luck, that maybe I aimed too high. But then the rejection started to settle into my skin, not just from schools, but from my own family. My dad called me a loser, told me I was wasting my life with my movie nonsense. One night he snapped and told me to get out, and that was it. No fight, no goodbye, just me with a backpack and nowhere to go. That night, I slept on a friend's couch, trying to figure out what the hell had gone wrong. And that was the moment something in me shifted. I stopped waiting for their approval. I stopped hoping they'd change, because as far as I knew, they had given up on me. And maybe they had never really believed in me to begin with. But now, 18 years later, I find out it was never about my failures. I wasn't rejected by colleges. I was rejected by them. They made the choice for me, without telling me, without remorse, and without giving me the life I worked for. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about that time, all the shame, all the blame I put on myself, flipped upside down. I spent weeks on that couch, pretending I was okay. My friend's family was kind, but I could feel the difference. I wasn't their kid, and I didn't belong. I told myself it was temporary, that I just needed a job, a plan, something. But the truth is, I was completely lost. I didn't have a backup plan because I really believed I'd get into college. I believed I was going somewhere, and that belief shattered the moment my dad threw me out and no school ever wrote back. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that the letters had come. I'd been accepted, not just to 1 or 2 places, but to several. Places that might have changed my life, opportunities that I earned. But instead of those envelopes landing in my hands, they disappeared into someone else's, into the hands of my own mother and brother, who made sure I never saw them. Back then, all I saw was silence, an empty mailbox, and an empty future. I thought I'd failed, that I wasn't good enough. That's what they told me, with their words and with their silence. "Maybe you're just not cut out for it," my dad had said, shaking his head in disappointment. And my mom? She didn't say much at all, just looked past me, like she couldn't bear to look at someone who had let them down. Like I was a burden they were ready to be rid of. The worst part? I believed them. So I gave up on the dream, Not all at once, but slowly. I stopped writing. I stopped watching films with the same wonder. I buried that part of me, told myself it was childish, just like they always said. I took the first job I could find. Line painting. Not glamorous, not creative, just honest work that paid the bills. And for the first time, I felt like I had control. It was hard, physical labor, but it was mine. No one could take it from me. And yet, that loss, the dream I was never even allowed to chase, stayed with me. Especially when I had to break up with my high school girlfriend. She got into college, she was moving forward, building something, and I was just surviving. I didn't blame her. The distance grew, the conversations got harder, and eventually, we both let go. That breakup felt like the final nail in the coffin of the life I thought I was going to live. What hurts most now is knowing it didn't have to be that way. All those years, I thought I was the failure, that I had fallen short. But the truth? My future was stolen from me, stolen by the very people who were supposed to protect and support me, and they did it on purpose, not out of confusion or fear, but out of jealousy, control, and cruelty. They watched me spiral, they watched me suffer, and they said nothing. Now, sitting here as a grown man, successful in a completely different field, all I can think is, what could have been? What should have been? And how do you forgive someone for taking that away before you even had a chance to try? The years that followed weren't easy. I didn't magically bounce back or suddenly figure life out. I just worked, day after day, job after job, trying to build something out of the scraps I'd been left with. I started with line painting crews, working long hours in the heat, the cold, the rain. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. And most importantly, it was mine. At first, I told myself it was temporary, just until I figured out what I really wanted. But temporary turned into a year, then 3, then more. I got good at it. Really good. I learned how to manage jobs, how to read contracts, how to talk to customers, how to fix what others messed up. Eventually, I saved enough to buy my own equipment. Then a van. Then I hired my first employee. Before I knew it, I was running my own line painting company. Something that had started out of desperation now had my name on it. Later, I expanded into asphalt repair. The money was better, but the work was brutal. I took jobs no one else wanted. Overnight striping, emergency pothole repairs. I said yes to everything because I couldn't afford not to. But success doesn't come without cost. I've injured my shoulders more times than I can count, pulled muscles, torn tendons. My lower back's shot. There are days I can barely bend without wincing. I've got years of wear and tear in my body from carrying equipment, crawling across asphalt, and pushing myself past the limit because I didn't have a safety net. I was the safety net. There were times I wondered if this was really it, if this was the life I'd been left with. No college degree, no films, no sets or scripts or lights, just paint, tar, heat, and silence. But even through the pain, I told myself I was proud of what I'd built, because I did it on my own. No handouts, no help. No one believed in me, so I became someone I could believe in. And maybe that wasn't the life I planned, but it was a life I earned, inch by inch. Still, there were nights, quiet, heavy nights, when I'd wonder, what would have happened if I had gotten those letters? If I'd gone to school, met people who shared my dreams, studied the craft I loved, and chased the life I was meant for? I buried those thoughts because they hurt too much, because I thought they didn't matter anymore. But when my mother sat across from me years later, holding that stack of envelopes, proof that the dream had been real, it hit me like a truck. All this time I thought I was starting from zero. But the truth? I was pushed there. They didn't just rob me of college, they robbed me of the choice, of the right to try and fail on my own terms. And all these years, while I was breaking my back to survive, my brother, the one they sacrificed everything to protect, was at home, sleeping in. It's a cruel kind of irony. I built something out of nothing. He had everything handed to him, and did nothing. And now they want to talk. Now they want to start over. They want to talk. They want to start over. That's what my mom said when she reached out. A simple message after nearly 2 decades of silence. No birthdays, no holidays, no apologies, just a text. Can we meet? There's something I need to tell you. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe part of me was still that kid on the couch, hoping someone would finally say, "We were wrong about you." Or maybe I just wanted to look them in the eye and see if they even remembered what they did. We met at a quiet diner. My mom sat across from me, older now, smaller, more tired-looking than I remembered. Then I saw him, my dad, sitting beside her, the man who threw me out without a second thought. My chest tightened. I hadn't seen either of them in almost 18 years. We made small talk for a few minutes, awkward, hollow, forced. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of old envelopes, yellowed with age and bound with a rubber band. My heart dropped. "I kept these," she said, not meeting my eyes. "You got into college. Several, actually." For a second, I couldn't breathe. I reached for the stack, hands trembling, flipping through the return addresses, schools I remembered applying to, some big names, some safety pics, all of them real, all of them mine, and all of them taken from me. I looked up at her, and she said the words like they were nothing. "I didn't want you to go before your brother. I thought it would crush him. He needed time to catch up." My brother. The same brother who now, according to her, still lives at home, unemployed, sleeping all day, flunked out of college, and once assaulted his barber. And somehow, my potential had to be sacrificed so he wouldn't feel left behind? All the nights I lay awake thinking I wasn't good enough, it wasn't true. It was never true. They made a choice, not just to hide those letters, but to let me suffer because it was easier than facing the truth about their favorite son. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "We both are." My dad nodded, silent. Sorry? Sorry doesn't undo years of pain. Sorry doesn't fix the damage to my back or the scars on my hands from a life I didn't choose. Sorry doesn't give me back the time I lost, the people, the opportunities, the version of me that might have existed if they had just let the letters reach my hands. They sat there, looking at me like maybe I'd cry, maybe I'd hug them, maybe we'd start over and pretend the past didn't exist. But it does exist. I've lived in the shadow of it for 18 years, and now they want forgiveness. What do you do when the people who broke you finally admit they did, but only because the truth can't stay buried anymore? I didn't have an answer then. I still don't. I didn't have an answer then. I still don't. They sat across from me in that booth, waiting, not with desperation, but with hope. Like they believed that acknowledging what they did was enough. Like a confession and an apology could hit a reset button on 18 years of silence, struggle, and scars I earned because of them. They kept talking, using words like mistake, regret, and we didn't know it would get that bad. But the thing is, they did know. They watched me walk out the door with nothing. They knew I had no money, no place to go, no support, and they let it happen. Worse, they chose to make it happen. I've run that truth through my head 1,000 times since that day in the diner. Every version of maybe they meant well has fallen apart under the weight of reality. They didn't sabotage me by accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding or miscommunication. It was control. It was jealousy. It was favoritism at its ugliest. And now they've lost control. And they're scared. My brother, the golden child, the center of their world, never lived up to the pedestal they built for him. He's still at home, sleeping in, doing nothing. The future they bet everything on never arrived. And the one they cast aside? I'm the one who survived. I'm the one who built something, even if it wasn't what I originally dreamed. I'm the one they thought would fail. And now they want a seat at my table. But what do you do with that? I've thought about it every day since. A part of me, a very small part, wants to let go. Not for them, but for me. Because carrying this bitterness burns. It's heavy. It's exhausting. I've carried it for almost 2 decades, and it's shaped everything about the man I've become. My drive, my walls, my loneliness. But forgiving someone doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't matter. And it sure as hell doesn't mean giving them a front row seat in my life again just because they're finally willing to admit what they did. They ask me now what I want. Do I want a relationship? Do I want to reconnect? Do I want to heal the family? But I don't know what I want from people who only looked for me when their golden plan fell apart. Do I want to forgive them? Maybe. Do I want to trust them? That's something else entirely. Because the truth is, I'm not the same person they left behind. That kid who stared at an empty mailbox, wondering why no one wanted him? He's gone. He had to disappear so I could survive, so I could become someone new, someone who built a life with his bare hands and grit and pain and pride. And now that I know the truth, the choice is mine for once. Not theirs, they stole my future back then. But they don't get to write the rest of my story. I do.